Well, God bless you, everyone. Thank you so very much. Thank you for joining me this morning. Thank you for being a part of the broadcast as we journey together into the kingdom, as we journey together to learn, to hear, to understand what the mandate of Elohim is in this season. So, thank you for taking a few minutes out of your schedule to join us here today. I want to take a few minutes to, as always, just to invite you to connect with us, to be a part of the broadcast, to share your thoughts and your insights and the things that you find to be insightful and things that are impactful on your walk and your journey. So as we get ready to get started this morning, as others begin to join and to come into the broadcast, I want to encourage you to reach out to us and connect. I really enjoy hearing from all of you. It really makes it a lot easier and more enjoyable on this journey as I interact and connect and share with you all. And so I want to invite you to do that. You can reach me at my email address, and that is my personal email address. I communicate with all of my personal activities there. Among which this broadcast is a part of my personal activities. And I want to invite you to reach out to us at LC Bellany, Beloney, LC Bellany at yahoo.com. And here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to reach out to us there and just share your thoughts, share some of the things that you might be interested in hearing and discussing here on this broadcast. Maybe some ideas that I haven't discussed yet. Just share that with me. Let me know, and you can do that at our email address and say, "Hey, Apostle, what about this topic? What about this thought? This area of our journey?" Be more than happy to dialogue with you around that. The other area that I would like for you to really think about doing is sharing your experiences, sharing your journey. Again, my purpose of this platform is to share my journey, of course, but also to share your journey, because I understand fully and completely that my journey is cocooned in the assignment that I've been given. And I recognize fully that my assignment is not all encompassing of the kingdom. It has its place, its significance, its importance, but it is not by any stretch of the imagination everything that there is about to understand and to know about the kingdom. And neither is yours or anyone else's for that matter. But collectively, we do make up the entirety of what Elohim wants us to understand concerning the kingdom in the earth. And so by dialoguing one with another, we get a chance to expand our scope of the kingdom. We can expand our understanding of the kingdom. And so please join in with the conversation and dialogue with us. The last thing I'd like to do is invite you to say hello. Just drop a hi, hello on the on whatever platform you're watching from, whether it's Facebook or YouTube. Just drop a say hello and good morning, and just let us know that you're here, and that gives us a sense of who's participating and who's joining in. If you have any thoughts or comments that you would like to make during the process of this presentation here this morning, I want to invite you to share that on the chat line, if you will. I can see them as they come in live, and that gives me an opportunity to respond to them immediately, or we may hold them to the end of the conversation to where we can address them and give air to them at that point in time. So again, I want to invite you to connect with us in all of those ways that I just mentioned. And it would certainly mean a lot to us to have you do so. So thank you so very much. And it would mean a lot to us if you did. Okay. So today I want to talk about the Black family and fruitfulness. The Black family and fruitfulness. It is important. It is critical for us to begin to understand the dire straits, and that's what I call them, the dire straits that the African American community, the Black community, the people of color in this community, and particularly people of African descent in this community are facing. And that is, by any stretch of the imagination, by any objective observance, we've hit a critical situation in our country and in our existence in this country as it pertains to the Black family, the fruitfulness of our Black family, the functionality of our Black family. When I say functionality, meaning a functional family where people are together with a common focus and a common goal, and where care and love and psychological health and well-being is nurtured, and all of those things that come along with a functional family. We are in dire straits by any objective observance or any objective measure. We're in dire straits as it pertains to this situation that we're in, and we're going to go over some statistics and go over some timelines today. But I want to say very clearly that the Black family is in a mess. The Black family is, that's just no other way to put it. We are in a mess. And if we're not careful, it is going to get worse and irreversibly worse. There does come a point in time where it's better to tear the building down than it is to renovate. And I'm afraid that the Black family, I know we love to say how, we're resilient. We're in a mess is what we're in. We're in a mess. The Black family is in a mess. And it bothers me. It bothers me greatly to have to say that and to have to accept that as a reality, because family is such a major matter of fact. I'm not even going to say such a, family is the major issue within any community. It is the bedrock of any social organization within a community, whether it is the global community or the national community or the local community or the family community. Okay, it is the bedrock. From that, societies grow. Okay. And what concerns me more, I guess, in general, is just the state of the family in this country. But more in particular, it is the state of the family within the African American community. And that, at this point, is very troubling by any stretch or by any objective observance of where things stand. I've lived long enough now to have had and have seen a number of changes and shifts. Now, there's enough, if as the old proverbial statement goes, enough water under the bridge now that I've seen a few things. And matter of fact, I've seen things reciprocate in terms of, came around, went away, and now back around again. So I have some data points from which I can begin to reference this situation that we're in the Black community. And one of those data points I can remember is when I was in high school, early high school. I can remember young girls getting pregnant in the local community, and I'm talking about young African American girls getting pregnant in school. And now all of a sudden, rather than taking the girl out of that and putting her into an alternative program to help her and so forth and so on, they facilitated her pregnancy in school. Okay. Your community may not have done that, but that was certainly prevalent in the community that I grew up in. And mind you, I grew up in the Deep South. I grew up in Louisiana. And one of the things that and by the way, I am so fortunate to have traveled away from Louisiana and gotten exposed to a global community and been able to see some things that I would not have been able to see had I been, isolated in just in Louisiana. So I'm thankful for that. But having said that, I remember the advent of young girls getting pregnant, and now there are daycares and facilities within the school that allowed her to continue her education. Now, on the one hand, one would say that that was a very noble thing to do. But on the other hand, the unintended consequences that are often neglected or ignored are the unintended consequences of glorifying her pregnancy in the eyes of other young ladies. Okay. If you're going to glorify her, then I want some of that glory. And what happens? Now you facilitate the behavior that led to the pregnancy that now is starting to infiltrate or to influence other young ladies. Not just the young ladies, because I don't want to put it off on just on them, because it takes two to tango. But the young lady bears the brunt of that pregnancy. She has to carry the child. More often than not, she is the one that has to raise the child, or her with her family. The burden is put on them. Okay. The social stigma, the social issues that were surrounding that at that time, all of that was often put on the young girl. And so as a result of that, now you have young ladies that are looking at this and now being influenced by this, and their guards drop, their standards are lowered. And then the next thing you know, you have what we have today, this proliferation of young girls that are becoming pregnant before marriage. And that's why I want to talk about. So I'm not going to sugarcoat what I've observed here. The Black family is in a mess. Fruitfulness is still abundant, but the family is in a mess. It's in dire straits. And we've got to become, as a community. And for those of you that happen to be non-African American, just bear with me today as I address this specific issue about the African American or the Black community. The other thing I want to say is that we've gone out of our way. We've gone out of our way to destigmatize the out of wedlock pregnancies within our community. Now, all of a sudden, you have this young lady that is virtuous, that is focused, that is accomplished. I'm talking about high school now, that is accomplished. And she now is pushed aside so that we can give glory to the young lady that got pregnant, did get her education, did pursue higher standards, and kudos to her. But she gets the limelight, and the young girl that maintained virtuosity and maintained standards and maintained excellence and accomplishment, she gets, okay, but we're going to give glory to this young girl because look how brave she was, and look how steadfast she was, and look how she overcame adversity and all of that. Now, what are the unintended consequences of that mindset? You discourage virtuosity and you encourage promiscuousness. And that's what happens. Those are the unintended consequences that we are suffering from in our community this very day. Unintended consequences. And so when we look at the Black family and the state of the Black family as we have it today, ladies and gentlemen, we are in dire straits. We are in dire straits. And no one is going to get us out of this but us. No one should get us out of this but us. I'm not suggesting people don't lend assistance and aid to us, but we are the ones that are responsible. And it is going to begin with those that take a vocal stand to promote virtuosity, to promote standards. I want to be very clear with what I'm saying and advocating here. There are many of us that know people. You yourself may have been a part of a single parent or out of wedlock pregnancy. Okay, that's good. I get it. Look, move on. But it doesn't change the facts that that behavior led others in a path that they probably shouldn't have gone. Now, I'm not suggesting that we go back to the point to where, people have to wear a scarlet letter and, a scarlet P on their back because they got pregnant and what have you. I'm not suggesting that at all. But what I am suggesting is that we do not inadvertently discourage virtuosity while we're trying to support and aid promiscuousness, a promiscuity. That's what I'm suggesting. That's what I'm advocating. Okay. Now, there are, I can remember, as I said, when this was emerging and I was in high school back in the the mid 70s to the late 70s is my time in high school. Okay. I can remember that. And I know that there are instances, anyway, let me not go down that path. Let me not digress. But I was in school in the mid 70s to late 70s. And I can tell you that what I watched and what I was engaged in as a young teenage boy was a lowered standard. Okay. Well, kids are going to be kids. Teenagers are going to be promiscuous and so forth and so on. That may very well be the case, but it doesn't mandate that we facilitate their promiscuity. It doesn't, we should not get lulled into the fact that there is nothing we can do, because I don't believe that. I believe there's nothing we've done, but not nothing we can do and should have done. One of the things that, and if you've listened to this broadcast for any length of time, one of the gentlemen that I often listen to is a gentleman by the name of Dr. Thomas Sowell, Sowell. I would highly recommend those of you that have not encountered him to take a minute to look him up on YouTube, look him up on Google him. Again, THOMAS, Thomas Sowell, Sowell. He's a Black man. He is an absolute intellectual thinker and a researcher. He's now 92 years old. But there's video all over the internet about the things that he advocates and he teaches and he researches, and he has data to or as they now say in modern time, he has the receipts to support the things that he advocates. So Dr. Sowell often talks about intellectuals, of which he is one, but he is an intellectual that of a different cut of cloth, if I might say that. Dr. Sowell often talks about how intellectuals, they come up with these brilliant ideas and they come up with these brilliant thoughts, not taking into account the consequences of those ideas, and they promote those ideas within the intellectual community that makes its way to the educational community, that makes its way to the literary community, that makes its way to the media community. And now all of a sudden that idea becomes the standard by which society is supposed to begin to govern itself. And one of the things that he begins to talk about as a part of his promoting the fact that intellectuals often have bad ideas and they never suffer the consequences of promoting that bad idea. And one of those bad ideas was sex education in the um, public school system. Sex education, which is still proliferating even to this very day. So, sex education in the public school system. And one of the things that he advocates, and we're going to talk about this in just a few minutes here, because I have some stats and some data, or if you will, some receipts to talk about why I believe that the Black community is in dire straits and that we are and must begin to course correct, or eventually, beloved, there will be nothing left of what we call a functional Black community, a functional Black family. Anyway, so Dr. Soul talks about sex education in the public school system that started sometime around the late 1960s. And in that, he talks about the teenage pregnancy that was going down prior to the implementation of sex education in the school system. Look it up, please look it up, Dr. Thomas Sowell. Teenage pregnancy was going down in the 1950s, okay, the decade prior to the Civil Rights and the Great Society program, where out of that was birthed sex education in the school system. It was going down. So why did they have, and why did they feel the necessity to introduce sex education when teenage pregnancy was going down? Because some intellectual or intellectuals had this bright idea and this bright thought, oh, you know what? We need to teach kids sex in schools because parents cannot be trusted to teach their kids about sex. Mind you, teenage pregnancy is going down. So what was the agenda? The agenda wasn't to teach kids. The agenda was to promote a bright idea. That's my take on it. The agenda was to promote a bright idea, how smart and how intellectual and how forward-leaning and thinking we are, right? That was the idea. Forget about whether or not it's functional and beneficial to the kids. So they did it. They introduced sex education into the school system. I forget the exact year that it entered, but they did. It was sometimes around the late 60s. When they did, the decades following that, we saw, again, here are the receipts, we saw an explosion of teenage pregnancy. Did anybody ever suffer the consequences of that bad idea? No, they just chalked that off and went on to the next crazy bad idea that they could come up with for society. And again, I know I'm ranting here and probably well beyond just a presentation. I'm getting emotional because this bothers me that many times people begin, or people in power, people with influence, they promote ideas for the sake of the idea, irregardless of the impact that that idea has on the unsuspecting recipients of that idea. Okay? Many times that's the case. People begin to embrace these ideas, and the next thing you know, the consequences are dire, and before you know it, no one is held accountable for those horrible, horrific consequences that have been perpetrated on unsuspecting and unaware recipients. And that's what we have with this sex education. I'll never forget. I was beyond that by the time I came along. I was through the parochial school system. I was beyond that. It trailed me just a little bit because I never got into some of the, I got into biology and anatomy, but never into sex education. That should be left to parents and mothers and fathers. If you're listening to this, I want to encourage you. Do not subject your child to public education where it comes to sex education. Nowadays, it is horrific what they are teaching kids in the public school system. It's horrific. And as an involved parent, when my kids were coming along, I took it personal to make sure that I understood what my kids were engaged in. But anyway, so we understand that now, post the civil rights, or if you will, post the late 1960s, sex education is implemented, and now all of a sudden, now the teenage pregnancy rate is skyrocketing, and even to this very day. We're going to talk about a statistic you've heard me recite on this program before, but I have the receipts today to talk about where this information is coming from. Okay. So let's take, for example, not for example, but let's just for a moment. There was some news there was some excitement in the news cycle probably about 6 months ago, where Congressman Byron Donald made a statement. And for those of you that don't know, Byron Donald is a Republican, African-American Republican representing the state of Florida in the U.S. House of Representatives. I forget what district he's representing. As a matter of fact, he's currently running for governor of Florida right now, and many pundits believe that he has a strong, better than average chance of actually winning the governor's house race in Florida. But be that as it may, Representative Donald made a statement on the Breakfast Club. He was interviewing with Charlemagne the God, and in that, no, I'm sorry, he was being interviewed. It wasn't on the Breakfast Club. He was being interviewed, and in that interview, he made this statement, and I quote, "The Black family was more intact during the Jim Crow era than we are today." That's what he said. Well, of course, the media and his opponents took that, jumped on that, because any reference, any positive light, anything positive, anything that remotely could be considered constructive during the Jim Crow era was as taboo, persona non grata, do not touch it with a 10-foot pole, that type of approach. So they went all hyperbolic, and they've got all apoplectic, and they just couldn't get enough of calling him Uncle Tom and a racist and whatever. They came up with all the usual euphemisms and excoriations about him that they could. But if you listen to what he said, he was talking about the Black family being intact, a two-parent, children, unified group, the Black family. The reality of what he was saying was, in fact, factual. The reality of what he was saying was factual. The Black family during the Jim Crow era, I'm not saying that they didn't face extreme adversity, but they were unified, united. They were a family, and they were together. That's a fact. And I have the receipts to show you here in just a second. The Black family was unified during the Jim Crow era, far more than what we are today. This is why I am crying out loud on the mountaintop here on this broadcast today. Because we are in a mess as a unity, as a community, and in particular, the Black family in that community. We're in a mess. There's just no two ways about it. And so they had their say, and as again got all apoplectic about it, and just could not understand how could this Black man say this horrific thing, because it was true. The father, the mother, the children, they were all together. Yes, they faced racism. Yes, they faced untold discrimination. They faced all of that, but they did it together. So the young boy or girl that was growing up in that family watched their mother and father deal with those issues. They became stronger, more functional. They went out and got married and had a family, and they unified themselves around that family unit. And then post Jim Crow. So let's take a look at some receipts, if you will. Don my cheaters here for a second. Let's take a look at some receipts. I'm going to share something on the screen. During the Jim Crow era, and I went and did some research. Listen to this. During the Jim Crow era, the late 19th century to the mid 20th century, the mid 20th century would be right around 1950, 1960, and so forth. Okay. No, not and so forth, but during that time, up to the 1960s. Black marriage rates were notably high. By 1950, listen to this, approximately 64% of Black men and 62% of Black women were married. That's during the Jim Crow era, up to 1950. Okay. The current marriage rate for Black Americans today, as of 2023, that's roughly 2 years ago, approximately 31% of African American adults are married, according to the data from the U.S. Census Bureau American Community Survey. Now, there's one thing I want you to point out about this. Okay, there's one thing I want to point out about this, and that is the birth rate hasn't stopped. Marriage has gone down, but the birth rate hasn't gone down. So what does that mean? And we're going to talk about that in just a second. That means that babies are still being born, but they're not being born to married families or to married couples. I'm going to say that again. The marriage rate has gone down from the 60 lower 60 percentile down to the lower 30 percentile. That's 30% reduction in marriage rate. But the baby making is still happening. So that means now that babies are being born out of wedlock to single parents into a dysfunctional societal structure or family structure. Okay, that's what that means. And I can tell you, it is having an effect negatively. And this is my personal opinion. I don't have any data. This is just my personal opinion. We are hitting a critical mass of irrevocable damage. And outside of an intervention from God, a miracle, if you will, we won't be able to recover from this for decades, if not centuries, in this country. This is why it's imperative for those of us that understand. I don't care if you went through it. I don't care if you had a baby out of wedlock. I don't care if you fathered a baby out of wedlock. It doesn't make it right, and your voice makes a difference. So what? People throw it in your face. Well, you did it. Okay, I was wrong when I did it. And I'm trying to help you not make the same mistake I made. Okay? Now, I will say to this audience in full transparency that I was fortunate not to have gone down that path. But it wasn't because I didn't go down that path. I was just one of the fortunate ones not to have it happen. And I can remember I was a junior in high school when I met the Lord for the first time, when I truly met the Lord. My sister, whose house I'm in today doing this broadcast, was a beacon for me in that process. And one of the things that I remember is, as I got to know the Lord and I heard for the first time during Sunday school the word fornication. I had no idea. I had no understanding. I was even younger than high school when I heard that word fornication. And I remember my reaction when I learned the definition of fornication. And I can remember almost saying, I wish I'd never heard that word. So, at any rate, I digress. The point being is, it's imperative for us to understand that even if you did go down that path, don't let that be a deterrent for you preventing others from going down that path. Okay? Let's take a look at some more statistics. So here is the marriage rate during the civil rights era. Okay? The marriage rate during the civil rights era. Now, this is when we were fighting for rights and fighting for acceptance and social justice and all of those things, right? Listen to this. In 1950, about 64% of Black men and 62% of Black women were married. We just started reading that. We just talked about that, right? Roughly 61% of all Black adults were married by 1960, 61%. In 1970, watch this now, the marriage rate remained relatively strong, although a slight decline had begun. About 60% of Black men and 56% of Black women were married. Were married. Never married adults, around 20 of Black adults had never been married by 1970. I want to stop for a second and talk about what happened in 1970 that is of real interest in this issue of the Black family and fruitfulness. What happened? Well, in 1970, or rather in 1967, the Civil Rights Act was finally put into legislative law, and out of that came a lot of what we now today refer to as the Great Society programs. The welfare state took hold. One of the things that the welfare state promoted was single parent access, meaning that a mother who had children without a father could access the benefits and the financial support from the state or from the welfare program. Okay, and in the Black community, one of the things that started to proliferate was what we called welfare babies. Okay, because mothers got paid on the basis of the number of children in the house. That's how that system got bastardized, and how it began to influence behavior in the Black community. Okay, so the marriage rate during the civil rights era was high, but after the civil rights legislation had been passed, and certain things that came along with the civil rights legislation, it began to adversely impact the Black family structure. Fathers were discouraged to be in the house because then mothers could not get this welfare check. So what happened? Mothers began to have babies, fathers began to leave the house so mothers can get the money. And now all of a sudden, children watching that and girls watching mama get that money because they got babies, and they had babies because they wanted to get the money. And there you have the horrific snowball effect. There you have the snowball effect. And this is what we are suffering from to this very day. And it's important for us to understand that we have to course correct this issue before it ultimately destroys the very fabric that gives the Black family something from which to build. Okay? This is important. This is critical. Hey, I want to take a break right here and ask you and remind you, if you have any thoughts or comments about this, please feel free to share your thoughts and comments in the comment section, and that way we can dialogue around this. So again, just feel free to share your thoughts and make a comment. It means a lot and allows us to dialogue with one another. Okay. All right. I want to share some receipts with you once again about single parenting during Jim Crow. Now, again, I want to say that Jim Crow was a horrific era for us as a people, but we as a family unit were intact. We were resolved. We created a bulwark in terms of the family unit, a stalwart in terms of the family unit's fight against the injustices of the Jim Crow era. We did, and we made strides. Let's read this. Jim Crow parenting during single parenting during the Jim Crow era. During the Jim Crow era, again, the late 19th century to the 19th century to the mid 20th century, single parent households were notably less prevalent among Black Americans than in later decades. In 1880, listen to this, approximately 11.7% of Black families were headed by single parent, compared to 8.2% of the white family. So that's pretty close. Although we made a smaller percentage of the community, the national community, we were on par with where the white community, the majority community was. But look at this. By 1960, the beginning of the civil rights, or right in the midst of the civil rights struggle, the proportion of Black children living in single parent households had risen to 22%, while for white children, it had gone down to 7%. Okay, we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. What happened after the civil rights movement? These figures indicate that although single parent households were more common among Black families than white families during the Jim Crow era, the majority of Black children were raised, listen to this, in two-parent households during this period. Two-parent households. It is imperative for us to begin to understand how and why we are infected by this problem. And Apostle Giles, I see your question. I'll get to it in just a second. Great question. The issue here, single parenting. We were good in this situation during Jim Crow, during the height of injustice and discrimination and all of these things that we faced as a family and as a community. Our family was intact. It gave us the foundation from which we could build a broader coalition, a more robust coalition to affect change. Now look at us. And we are in dire straits. Okay? I want to read something else. Single parenting post the civil rights era. Listen to this. 1965, 25% of Black children were born to unwed mothers. Up from 22, now we're at 25. In 1970, 38% of Black children lived with single parents. 1980, we're up to 41%. 1990, 68%. 2000, the trend persisted with a significant proportion of Black children living in single parent families. 2010, 72% of Black babies are born to unwed mothers. And that's the statistic that I shared with you that is prevalent among that I've promoted and I've stated on this broadcast many, many times. 72%, beloved, that is 3/4, 3 out of every 4, approximately 3 out of every 4 young Black children are born to single mothers. This is after the Civil Rights Act. This is post we've made it now to the mountaintop. Okay? We've made it. We've had the Dr. King's world-renowned speech. I don't care how much rhetoric you have. When people fall victim to money, it is hard to win them back. Even to their own demise, it is hard to recover them. By 2023, nearly 50% of Black children live with one parent compared to about 20% of white children. That's not born to single mothers. 50% of Black children live with one parent. Now, that one parent could have been married, gotten a divorce, so forth and so on. I get it. But in 2010, this is what alarms me. 72% of Black babies were born not to a married mother, but to an unmarried mother. That's horrific. So the fruitfulness is there. We don't have a problem with making babies and being fruitful and multiplying as the mandate, as the kingdom mandate has been given to humanity. The problem is that for this reason shall a man leave his mother and father and cleave unto his wife. That's the problem we have now, post the Civil Rights Act. This is something we've got to deal with. One more slide. And no, I think that's it. So I want to, before we get ready to wind it up, I want to say to all of us, my intent here today was to bring this issue to light, to your awareness, to allow you to see and hear the receipts on this issue. This is something that we've got to address, as I said, before we go beyond that point of no return. And I'm concerned that if we're not already there, we're fastly and quickly approaching that point to where not only are we going to lose a generation, which I think now that is done. Listen, beloved, I want to point this out. I really want to point this out. Okay. In the last 45 days to 60 days, we've had two major national attention events involving a young Black female and a young Black male. In one instance, the young Black female concusses another young Black female on the field of competition while running a track event. One girl is on the inside track, another girl is passing her on the outside track. The young girl on the inside track gets offended by the young girl passing her. She has the baton, running with it. She raises the baton and whacks the girl in the head, in the back of the head, hard enough to run her off the course, off the track. What kind of home training, what kind of upbringing, what kind of social engagement allows her to do something like that? Now, this girl came from a two-parent home. But what is our community? What has become of our community to where we're striking at each other in such a violent way? I'm not going to give commentary on who, this, that, and the other. Those are the facts. The girl was passing her. The girl hit her on the head, knocked her off the course. And now the NAACP comes not to the defense of the girl that got assaulted, but to the girl that did the assault. What are we promoting, people? What are we advocating? I told you at the beginning, the girl got pregnant, she gets praised. The girl that's virtuous, she gets marginalized. And that's exactly what happened in this case. The girl, the perpetrator, got praised, got put up, got defended, and all of that by the Black community in many instances. In some instances, let me not say all the Black community. I digress. I retract that. But the fact that she got praised or that she got supported at all, other than to say, baby, you need to own up to this. You need to accept what you did was wrong and move on. We support you to move on, but we can't support you in defending what you did. That's one instance. In Texas, this happened either last week or somewhere there about in the last 10 days. A young black man, and now all the detail has not come out around this, I grant you that. But a young black man at a track meet was sitting behind a group of young white men, young white teenagers. Okay, they were all teenagers, high schoolers, and some type of back and forth began to ensue. Okay, by all accounts that they have at this point, no physical altercation was being engaged in, but the young black man felt offended enough to pull out a knife that he had with him and stab the young man in the chest, ultimately killing him. Beloved, what are we doing? Make that make sense. So you're so offended, you're so sensitive that what someone says to you causes you to kill them. No, that doesn't make sense to me. I know we're going to come up with all the reasons why he called him a nigger and he called him a this and he called him a whatever. So what? So what? Call him something back. But yet we have a young life taken and another life destroyed because we've lost the values of what makes a functional family. I'll say this as I get ready to close and take you and review some of your questions. Please, again, by all means, share your thoughts and your insights and your comments. I'd love to hear them. We're going to go through a number of them that I see have come up on the chat line. So looking forward to it. But I want to say this, and I'm being a little transparent here. So my oldest grandchild lives with my wife and I, and along with his mother and his little brother. And it just so happened that he's a excellent student. He's doing well, but just so happened that this time he brought home a progress report that was unacceptable. Unacceptable, flat out unacceptable. I mean, unacceptable at every level. So I sat down with him and because I'm the father figure, I'm the man figure in his life. Okay, just so happens to be an old school man figure, but I am the father figure in his life. So we had a talk, and I told him, I said, son, this hurts me more than you can ever imagine, because he's a good kid. I said, this hurts me more than you can ever imagine. But any plans you think you might have in the upcoming near future, you can cancel those plans. This behavior will be stopped, halted, cut off immediately. You're not going to bring these kind of grades home. I'm sorry, you're just not. And needless to say, he's 16 and not quite figuring out how serious this is. Comes back to me sometime later and wants to say, Papa, that's what he calls me. He said, Papa, I brought up one of my grades. I said, great, absolutely, man. Power to you. Let's do this. I know you can do it. But the other grade still lagging. Can I go to the fair? Buddy, I'm sorry. The rules are not the rules, but the law is you brought these grades home. You have to suffer the consequences of those grades. And part of the consequences of those grades are lost privileges. And these are the privileges that you jeopardize. It's not me. I'm just enforcing it. It's not me. You jeopardized your freedom to go to the fair. Not me. Now you have to own it. You have to suffer the consequences of your lack of responsibility. You think he's going to do it again next time? You think he's going to not remember not being able to go somewhere that he wanted to go? Of course he will remember that. And that's why it's important for us to hold our young people accountable. I said all of that to simply say, without family, without some structure, without that cohesive family structure around him, he won't hold himself accountable. No one ever will. It's why it's a parent. Okay? The responsibility for the parent to do that. And I think that's the breakdown of the family prevents good, solid parenting. And now we're raising a generation, and we're doing things in a generation where our kids are just not getting the values that promote a healthy future for them. Amen. Amen. Well, God bless you. Thank you so very much. I want to share some of the comments. Lady Jolyn Poole, thank you, Lady Joe. Thank you so very much for joining in. Sex education equal teen pregnancy equal abortion equals the agenda. Absolutely. So I want to say that, Lady Joe, you bring out a very good point. Sex education was introduced, teen pregnancy went up, abortion then came into the picture, and that was the agenda all along. Again, these people not taking consequence, not taking responsibility for the consequences that their intellectual ideas create, perpetrate these things on an unsuspecting community, i.e., the Black community, and now we're suffering from these horrific statistics, these horrific receipts that we have to deal with because we fell victim to it. That's just all it is to it. There's no two ways about it. Vernon says this, Apostle, what do you believe establishes a man and a woman as officially being married? So there is no doubt that the official marriage receipt is sexual intimacy. When a man and a woman come together, the consummation, even in the law of our lands, the consummation of a marriage is not the marriage certificate that you get from the courthouse. It is the sexual engagement that comes along. And so you can see how promiscuity and marriage get conflated when we have physical intimacy outside of, if you will, the intent or the bond or the the intent of a unified relationship. Okay, so let me back up, Apostle and Giles, and say this. The one thing I want us to understand is that in the beginning, it was, I want to be with you. Yes, I want to be with you. We come together. We have an intimate relationship. Then we are married. That is the kingdom signification of marriage. We live in a society of laws. So thus, according to the law, in addition to that engagement, there must accompany with it a certificate of marriage that says the state recognizes this couple as a married couple. Now we've moved into what we call common law marriage. I don't have a certificate of marriage, okay? But I've stayed together with that person for X amount of time. And now the state says, well, we recognize this as a common law marriage, okay? So marriage to me, and I believe from a kingdom standpoint, is the first instance. You have a young man, you have a young lady, and they decide that they want to be together, that they want to be a couple, a marriage, a family. They, between themselves, make that agreement, and they come together and they consummate that agreement with an act of physical intimacy. And thus God operates and recognizes that as, in fact, a kingdom relationship, i.e., a marriage. Okay. Yes, the state requires that we have a certificate of marriage or a common law marriage, as the state can recognize it, but it doesn't change the kingdom's perspective. And that's what I believe, Apostle Giles, is something that's required. And I would say to a lesser extent, that a open communal acknowledgement of that relationship as a marriage is required or is a part of that process as well. But the most important thing by far is that person, these two people recognizing they want to be together, they come together, they consummate that acknowledgement physically, and that in the sight of God makes them, in the sight of God, a marriage and a family, and all the children that respond, that result after that, and so forth and so on. Okay. All right. By all means, share your thoughts, Apostle Giles. Share your thoughts. Very good reminder of a very real problem that needs to be rectified. Thanks, Apostle. I appreciate that. We do need to rectify this issue in within our community. It is bad. It is bad, y'all. It is bad. And whatever you can do, whatever you can support and promote by way of a healthy family structure, do it. Do it. By all means, do it. Another perspective is sex education equal teen pregnancy equal proportion equals agenda. Absolutely. Okay, yeah, it came through, Lady Joe. So again, I want to encourage all of us as we bring this broadcast to a close. Let us remember again, the Black family, beloved. We are a resilient people, but we are in a dire situation here with this marriage rate and with our out of wedlock pregnancy rates in our community. This by any stretch is somebody needs to is a problem, but so someone needs to champion. I'm not, that's not my call. I recognize that, but someone has a passion for this and needs to be that person that Elohim, or one of the people that Elohim anoints, and they submit themselves to be anointed for this call and this purpose. Hopefully someone hearing this broadcast will do so. Well, listen, beloved, thank you so very much. I really appreciate it. And again, I want to invite all of you to reach out to us, connect with us. And if you'd like to make a contribution to the broadcast, you can do so. You can do so either on the Cash App platform or on the PayPal platform. Cash App would be $ LC Bellany, $LC Bellany on the Cash App platform. The PayPal platform would be the @ you see the little A in the circle, the @ LC Bellany, and you can make a contribution there as well. It would mean a lot to us, and we would appreciate it tremendously. And thank you, those of you that have made contributions. Thank you so very much. It has been well received and much appreciated. And thank you. Do me a favor. If you make a contribution, send me an email so that I can personally send you an email back thanking you for it. Because on those platforms, you can only do so much, but it doesn't express the appreciation that is deeply felt when you do so, make a contribution. So thank you so very much. Until next time, I want to invite all of you to be well, be blessed, and join us again next Sunday right here at 10:30 a.m. Central Standard Time for another episode of Kingdom Voice broadcast. We'll see you then.